This topic has cropped up numerous times already and will continue to do so, showing how important and how integrated it is. The nervous system is an important system to have an understanding of and can be found in your manuals in Unit 1, Section 6. The nervous system is a complex system that has its fingers in every pie. It is the command, control and communication centre of the body. It is responsible for movement, muscle control, digestion, information transportation, homeostasis and much more. The nervous system gathers information, interprets it and if required sends a response. As a massage therapist, you can have a direct impact on the nervous system, which in turn can have an indirect impact on other systems, such as the respiratory and digestive system. When you massage, you have an intention. This can be to relax the muscles, stimulate or help recovery. Certain massage techniques with the correct speed, tempo and depth will encourage stimulation of the parasympathetic nervous system. Relaxing muscles, slowing breathing, stimulating the digestive system, while other techniques with a quick tempo will stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, in turn stimulating the muscles, quickening breathing and preparing the body for activity. We will look at the sympathetic and parasympathetic in more detail later. Looking at the structures of the nervous system, it has two major divisions. The central nervous system, commonly called the CNS, this consists of the brain and the spinal cord and is responsible for processing information and deciding what to do. Then you have the peripheral nervous system, commonly called the PNS. This is all the other nerves through the body and is responsible for gathering information and delivering the response. The CNS is the command centre, comprising of the brain and the spinal cord. Both these structures are protected by three membranes called the meninges. This is the area that is affected in meningitis, an infection causing, among other things, inflammation of the meninges. It can be either a bacterial, viral and in very rare cases a fungal infection and must be taken seriously. The longer this is left untreated, the more risk of seizures and neurological damage, leading potentially to brain damage, gait problems and learning difficulties. Between these layers you have a cerebrospinal fluid, a clear watery fluid derived from blood plasma, helping to protect, provide nutrients, take away waste and maintain homeostasis of the CNS. Let's look at the central nervous system in more detail. Firstly, the brain. There are four main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, the Diencephalon and the brainstem. The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain, divided into two hemispheres. It is responsible for sensory perception, so pain, touch, temperature, sight, taste, smell and hearing. It also deals with control and initiation of voluntary muscle contraction, so movements you choose to make. The cerebellum is again divided into two hemispheres and is below the cerebrum. The cerebellum stores all learnt skills. It is responsible for coordinating voluntary movement, including proprioception, posture and balance. The more you use this skill, the more ingrained and natural it will become. So if a posture is learnt at an early age, it will become harder to alter than a posture learnt in later life. If a posture or gait comes about from an injury, say a limp, it is far easier to correct as it is not so ingrained in the cerebellum. If this is left uncorrected, it can create a secondary dysfunction. The sooner the limp is addressed, the quicker and easier it will be to correct. The brainstem links the brain and the spinal cord together. It is made up of the midbrain, pons and medulla. The midbrain is the highest section and controls certain eye movements and integrates messages about tone and posture. The pons is found in the centre of the brainstem and is associated with breathing, eye movements, expression and chewing. And finally, at the bottom of the brainstem, top of the spinal cord, is the medulla, which controls rate of breathing, heart rate, blood pressure and reflex actions such as coughing, sneezing and vomiting. Between the midbrain and the cerebellum, you will find the Diencephalon. This contains the thalamus, the hypothalamus and the pineal gland. The thalamus is responsible for passing sensory and motor information from the cerebellum to the cerebrum and associates certain sensory impulses with positive and negative feelings. The hypothalamus forms the link between the nervous and the endocrine system, and together the two systems initiate the movement involved in expressing reactive emotions such as fear and anger. The pineal gland is essential for controlling sleep cycles and body rhythms. These three endocrine glands will be looked at in further detail in the endocrine system. The secondary component of the CNS is the spinal cord. It is the link between command and the rest of the body's nervous system. The spinal cord runs down the length of the spinal column through the centre of the vertebrae in a channel called the spinal canal. One of the functions of the spinal column is to protect the spinal cord from injury. The sections of the cord are named according to where they are in the spinal column. These are the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral and coccygeal. Typically, the information gathered by the sensory nerves travels to the brain to be processed, but not all information has to. The spinal cord is capable of integrating information and producing a reflex response without the brain getting involved. This is known as a reflex arc. So what is a reflex arc? For a human or any other organism to survive, it sometimes needs to respond quickly to a stimulus such as heat or pain. If you go to grab a hot pan out the oven without an oven glove, the sensory neurons will pick up the extreme and dangerous level of heat. The information is relayed through the sensory neuron to the spinal cord. Rather than the information travelling through the spinal cord to the brain and coming back again, by which time you will be saying ouch a lot, it instead passes it to a relay neuron in the spinal cord. Relay neurons, also known as interneurons, connect sensory and motor neurons together and are found in the spinal cord and the brain. The motor neuron instantly sends a response to the effector, i.e. the muscle that needs to act, and you drop the pan. Reflex arcs can be overridden, but this takes practice and requires further neural messages. The peripheral nervous system links the body to the CNS and consists of two types of neuron. Afferent neurons are sensory neurons that carry nerve impulses, relaying environmental information to the CNS. Efferent neurons are motor neurons. They carry impulses away from the central nervous system, causing an action to take place, such as a muscle contraction or hormone secretion. So what does the PNS look like? Branches of nerves emerge from the spinal column. 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves. These consist of both sensory and motor nerves and are bundled into 5 plexuses or groups of nerves: cervical, brachial, lumbar, sacral and coccygeal, depending on their location. Each plexus will provide sensation to a different area. Within the additional resources, there is a chart showing what area of the body nerves innervate, which can be helpful when clients complain of tingling or numbness in an area. The PNS has 2 divisions, the somatic and the autonomic. The somatic nervous system controls voluntary actions, so things we decide to do, like walk, stand, lift something, so mainly control the skeletal muscles. The autonomic branch controls all involuntary things we don't think about, including digestion, heart, breathing and homeostasis. The autonomic system can be further subdivided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system is responsible for getting you ready to act, commonly thought of as the fight or flight response. It shuts down unimportant functions in the body, such as digestion, and readies the body to act by increasing metabolism of energy, heart rate, and making us more alert of our environment. Unfortunately, overexposure to this kind of stimulation tends to send the body into overdrive. It is only meant to help to get you out of a sticky situation, such as being chased by a lion. But over a longer period of time, it can affect a person's appetite or reproductive system and can leave a person generally on edge all the time. The parasympathetic system is the opposite side of the coin and is commonly thought of as the rest and digest response. This is more calming and stimulates mundane functions such as digestion. The autonomic system is the area a sports massage therapist is looking to affect. Usually the parasympathetic, but in someone preparing for an event, as in a pre-event massage, we are looking to stimulate the sympathetic to a level that prepares them for the event. So just to recap, looking at the chart, you have the CNS, which is connected to the PNS. The PNS subdivides into the somatic and autonomic systems. The autonomic further subdivides into the sympathetic and parasympathetic. As the nervous system is made up from nerve cells or neurons, let's have a look at them in more detail. Nerve cells are responsible for transmitting messages either from one end of the body to the other or just a short distance. Looking at the structure, they have a cell body or soma. This contains all the necessary components of the cell. If you remember back to your first session on the human organism, you will find exactly the same structures in a nerve cell body as any other cell. The nucleus within the cell body regulates cell activity, and if the cell body dies, the neuron dies. Dendrites can be found at one or both ends of the neuron. These carry incoming action potentials or nerve impulses. These communicate with other nerve cells, but are also responsible for picking up the stimulus like hot and cold. They perceive the environment. Protruding from the cell body, you will find a cable-like structure called the axon. This is responsible for carrying action potentials the length of the cell. The axon is covered with a myelin sheath. This is a thin layer that insulates but also helps to speed up the movement of the action potential. It looks a little like bubbles down the length of the axon rather than a continuous sheath. The myelin sheath is made mainly from fat and is one of the reasons fats are important in the diet and should never be completely excluded. The axon terminal can be found at the end of the axon and connects to the other cells. This could be another neuron or a muscle cell. I mentioned a term called an action potential. Simply put, this is an electrical impulse that will travel along an electrically excitable cell. Not quite so easy is how does this happen? Nerve cells are relatively positively charged on the outside and relatively negatively charged on the inside when they are at rest. When a neuron is inactive, it is sat in its resting potential. When there is a big enough stimulus, an action potential will occur. This is caused by sodium and potassium ions flowing in and out of the axon, causing a depolarization. This means a section of the neuron becomes positively charged on the inside, and that same section becomes negatively charged on the outside. This runs down the neuron like a Mexican wave that has been done well. As the action potential moves to the next section, the previous section returns to its normal state. However, it has a short refractory period. This means it is unable to transmit another action potential for a short period of time. This refractory period is used in techniques such as muscle energy technique, METs, and proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, PNF. This is all you need to understand regarding action potentials. However, if you'd like to know more, there is links in our resources page. You have now covered everything you need to know about the nervous system and will be able to complete the following tasks. There will be questions in your theory exam based on this information.